I felt like having a relationship would save me, like a rescue sort of mode, and I was thinking really irrational, but for some reason, that's what I was thinking. If I have a relationship, everything will be solved, and, obviously, that's not the way it worked.
And like I said, I appreciate you talking about some of this. I'm sure I'm talking about complicated and difficult things, right?
Yeah,
But it's one thing to want a relationship. It's another thing with a relationship with a child.
I know.
Can you tell me?
Man, these excuses never get old. We're about to watch a parole hearing for a man out of the state of Utah for his not his first time getting caught trying to solicit a child. Now, we're going to watch a quick newsreel of the offense when he was initially caught in 2014, and then we're going to jump into the full parole hearing.
Pleasant Grove police have arrested a Juab County man for trying to meet up with a 13-year-old girl through Craigslist. Police say Clelon A posted an ad on the site looking for young girls. When an undercover officer responded to the ad, posing as the 13-year-old, investigators say Ames responded with an email requesting pictures. Police say eventually these emails turned inappropriate. Ames was arrested when he showed up for a planned meeting with the girl. Court records show Ames has been convicted in the past of solicitation crimes.
And there you have it. Now, let's jump in and I'll unpack it with all the details at the end.
And I would note you have support here. I'll state that for the record, and the board will know as well. Okay.
Okay,
So it looks like an original hearing happened in June of 2016,
yeah,
and a rehearing was ordered for now with sex offender treatment memo, which we'll also be discussing. Does that sound procedurally correct, sir?
that's as I remember, yeah.
Okay. So tell me about your offenses in general. You may have gone over them individually at the original hearing. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to ask you for any insight into your offenses.
Um, the, major offense was to, solicit an underage girl for, sexual contact through using Craigslist, and, what I thought I was dealing with a girl, 13 years old, that was, one of the police officers in Pleasant Grove, and then that led to my arrest when I went to meet her.
So obviously, sir, I understand that you were not talking to someone who was
Yeah.
underage.
Yeah, yeah,
But
I believed I was at the time.
But you okay, but you're admitting, yeah, you believed you were. So obviously that's concerning, right?
Yeah,
Because it could have been.
it could have been, yes.
So anything you want to say about that?
At this point, I'm glad there was an intervention that even though it's led to prison at this point, it's really showed me how to deal with the emotional crises that was going on that led up to that. And
Can you
through the
expand on that? What do you mean by that?
well, for example, the whole stress cycle, like offense cycle, how you begin to think about doing something stupid. You have the reasons for it, you have the excuses for it, and it eventually leads you down into a path of doing something that you shouldn't do. Through the therapy, I've really learned how to counteract that, to step back and say, oh no, this is not something I need to do. This is going to cause problems for me, could cause problems for someone else. And that's really been a major plus for me going through the therapy program.
It's good.
Yeah, yeah. I actually have dreams about that. It's really weird, but I will
You have
put
dreams about what?
about being in a situation where it could lead to a trouble, and in the dream, I'll talk myself out of it. So I've really internalized that. At least that's what it seems to me. If I'm dreaming about it in the middle of the night, something's clicking, something's staying.
Which is good, but I still want a little more expansion on what was going on at the time, because you're talking about you said mentioned a crisis. So what?
Yeah. Yeah. I was taking care of my elderly mother, and she was getting dementia. She'd had a couple of hospital stays, and it was getting really difficult to be, you know, everything for her, cleaning, cooking. Plus, when the money started running out, I was only marginally employed at the time, so there was not a lot of money. And the bills started mounting, and I was just in a state of absolute panic. And what I was looking for was, I felt like having a relationship would save me, like a rescue sort of mode. And I was thinking really irrational, but for some reason, that's what I was thinking. If I have a relationship, everything will be solved. And obviously that's not the way it worked.
And like I said, I appreciate you talking about some of this. I'm sure I'm talking about complicated, difficult things, right?
Yeah,
But it's one thing to want a relationship. It's another thing with the relationship with a child.
I know.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that and any insight you have into your risks?
At the time I was thinking like, so with the situation at home, I was doing things and things looked hopeless and I didn't feel like I was being appreciated. And so I was looking for a relationship where somebody would be able to look up, they would look up to me as a, you know, a positive figure, as, something that was doing something. And I just wasn't getting that at home. And so I started going on Craigslist looking for these relationships with all kinds of people. And some of them were adults, this one happened to be a child. And well, I believed I was talking to a child, and it was the children that I thought would really look up to me as kind of a positive figure. And I think that's where my thinking was at the time.
So what would you say your risks are moving forward that you have to make sure you deal with and identify?
Doing something where I feel like I'm actually making a difference in, the lives of people, a positive difference, and something I really believe in that really gives me a feeling of fulfillment. And it's nice to be appreciated once in a while too. But I think my biggest risk factor would be finding myself in a situation that feels really hopeless, where I'm not making any headway, where nothing is going well, and not on my account, but like feeling like the world is collapsing on me. And I think that's probably my biggest risk factor in overcoming how I would deal with that.
And how do you think you would deal with that now? Because I'm sure there are stressors, right? I mean,
Yeah.
moving forward.
Having a good support network, and through Mike, I believe, he's mentioned in several letters that, he knows a lot of people that he could introduce me to, and that will be the beginning of a much wider support network than I have right now. And then my others, Nick Castleton down in Eureka, he's been my power of attorney guy. He's been really helpful and supportive, and he's somebody I could turn to as well.
It's good. Sounds like you've thought about that, which is good.
Yeah.
The other offense I show is you had pictures of children.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say about that, sir?
I just thought, I was like, have an issue with pornography, and as that relates to trying to, meet this 13-year-old girl, it kind of goes along with kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Exacerbating or amplifying that offense. So you got the pictures to look at, and then, it plays back and forth psychologically. I'm not sure if I can put it into words exactly, but I'm hoping you get the picture.
Yeah, and if I, sometimes,
Reinforcing is the word I'm looking for.
and I think I understand, because I definitely want to clarify. I don't want to misinterpret you. So I think what you're saying is that at the time, the offenses kind of went hand in hand, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that,
Yeah, one reinforced the other, and then it's like a feedback loop, sort of.
when you kind of identified those risks, now you plan on dealing with them moving forward, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So those are the offenses for which the board has jurisdiction. But going over your criminal history, I also show an aggravated exploitation of prostitution. Can you tell me about that offense, sir?
That was 94
Yeah.
January, I believe. And that was, I'd been dealing with the prostitutes on and off for about a couple of years. And I asked one of them to set me up with an underage girl. And that's what led to that arrest. It turned out she was an informant for the Salt Lake City Police Department, and she arranged for this meeting, which turned out to be, I was arrested at that point in a hotel room.
So, and I want to make sure we have enough time to get to the sex offender treatment memo. But obviously, that shows a history, right?
Yeah.
You have the current offenses, and then you have a history of sex offenses with children. I mean, I understand that there was an informant, there was a police officer.
Yeah.
That's concerning, right? So
Mhm.
what do you think's different now?
What is different now is I can see how harmful that would have been to a minor. And looking back on an event that happened to me when I was 14, I've never really processed it, but I'm beginning to, and I can see how that is really would affect somebody else as a sexual assault. And I've been able to process that and put that in context with my behavior and to where I can more better understand it. I'm still processing this event that happened when I was 14, but it's kind of coming up to the surface as a more understandable event.
And if you do not want to discuss what you're talking about, sir, you don't have to. This is being recorded live
Yeah.
stream. You said something about when you were 14, and if you don't want to discuss, you don't.
Oh.
What are you referring to?
Oh, when I was in high school, I was down in the locker room, and four guys that were older than me assaulted me, wrapped a towel around my eyes, pulled me around by my penis, and tried to ram a pop bottle in my anus. And I just completely blanked that out and never really thought about how that affected me. And I'm starting to kind of process that now after all these years. We're talking like 1973 or 4, 72, something like that. It's quite a while ago.
And thank you for sharing that with me, sir. All right, I want to make sure we get to the sex offender treatment memo. First of all, before I get into specifics, what'd you think of it?
I'm actually enjoying it.
The program?
Yeah.
And but in regard to the actual treatment memo where it assessed your risk and everything, what did you think of that?
I don't see myself, there's something about violence there. I don't see myself doing anything violent. And I think that stems from the incident in 14. Violence and sex is just something that really makes me sick to my stomach. It's just something I cannot really wrap my head around. It just makes me ill. And other violent acts, I'm really not a violent person. I just don't like violent movies. Um, so I know I think that might have been a little, misconstrued or misunderstood on that.
So it did assess you as average risk, sir.
Yeah.
It noted that at times you speak objectively about his sexual offense, focusing on how his life history and stress forced him his problematic behaviors, and that currently your feedback is kind of tangential and self-serving. I'm quoting what they said, okay,
Mhm.
and that that present barriers make it difficult to gauge exactly what he is gaining from being in sex offender treatment. It did note you were in sex offender treatment and that your estimated date of completion is mid-August.
Yeah.
I guess what would you say about some of that stuff? Do you think you're really actively participating and learning a lot?
I believe I am. And I saw like Sassine, he's on, leave right now. And Mackenzie has taken over. And she read that and Mackenzie had a different opinion of that. I don't know if she's included that, but she had a different opinion that she didn't see that behavior, the way I was interacting in the group since she's took over in Sassine's absence. And I thought it was it surprised me when Mackenzie read that to me.
And so what I have is that, right? So that's why I'm asking you,
Yeah.
because I want to hear what you have to say. Do you know if you still have an estimated completion of mid-August of this year?
That's what Sassine said before he went on leave, and I'm figuring mid-August to mid-September, because you never know. You're gonna have people that don't show up sometimes, or you know, any time event that shuts everything down for a while. So I'm thinking more like the middle of September.
Okay, thank you for that. Sorry, we know you have no disciplinary violations, which is really good.
Hmm.
Regarding your release plans, according to your board packet, you said you weren't sure where you would live. Is that still kind of your?
Right now, yeah, I'm working on that. Mr. McCanish has said that he can kind of help me get into the old home inn. And the guy with the LDS volunteers, what's his name?
It's
Older
okay if
guy.
you don't know his name, sir.
Yeah, Dick Moore, I think. He's just gonna help me get into a place too. He said, once I saw the board and had some more definite information, then to get back with him and he would work with me on that.
Do you think you may need a halfway house for transition or?
Personally, I don't think I would need a halfway house. I've got a little bit of money where I can fall back on until I can get a job. And I think that would be better for me just to jump into society. And Mike said he could be a transitional, figure in that as well on the outside. Because he lives here in Salt Lake and, and I've got another friend here in Salt Lake, Dan Field, that could help on that too.
Do you have any plans for treatment if you
Oh.
were paroled?
I do have been accepted by a couple places and I recently got some more I sent to them, and I don't know if they sent these letters to you, but
I don't.
these are
Is
just
that
for-
Alpha Counseling?
see, there was Alpha, but they're only in Ogden now. I don't know if you know that. And then there's Alliance Treatment Center and Suncrest Counseling. And an update on those, I sent out like 7 letters to these different things that are on the tablet for the sex offender. 4 of them came back as address change, no forwarding address.
So just so you know, we're the board. We don't run the tablet plan
Oh.
program. The
Yeah,
department.
Yeah, but I just wanted to make you aware of that.
But I appreciate that information and maybe I
it's
can find somebody to
frustrating.
relay that information to.
Yeah, I've talked to my caseworkers a couple times. So far, nothing has been done. And I talked to Mackenzie about that Tuesday as well, let her know. So maybe she'll be able to get that updated on the tablet.
Okay.
I hope so, because it's really frustrating for people to get letters sent back.
And like I said, I mean, I'll try to figure out who I can inform of that, so maybe
Okay,
it can
yeah.
be a change, because obviously if, I know as a hearing officer, I appreciate hearing that you're actively looking into treatment, right? And if you can't contact the treatment, that
What
doesn't-
good's the point?
yeah,
Even
but
trying.
I appreciate that you're looking into that, and obviously it sounds like you have, so that's
Yeah.
really good.
And that's for everybody else too, that's looking into it.
For sure. All right, sir, and I would note the board received letters of support. I reviewed them. The board will have access to them, okay?
Okay.
All right, so those are all of my questions. From here, I'm a hearing officer. I make recommendations. The board ultimately decides. They're made up of 5 members. 3 of them have to come to one decision. That's the decision of the board. You should get that in writing within 2 to 4 weeks. Your family members, your friends, anyone listening to this hearing via video can go to bop.utah.gov. As soon as we have the decision, we post it on our website. Just so you know, it still takes some time, even on the website, but it's faster on the website than the mail. So someone can tell you what that decision is while you're waiting for the written one.
Okay.
Sir, I make note of your guideline, which is 218 months or July 14th, 2032.
Oh.
I-
When I got with the first hearing back in 16,
Mhm.
a few weeks later, I got a pink slip with a column and a lot of checks and numbers on it. And it said my matrix is 124 months.
Okay, so do you,
I don't have a copy. I sent that out quite a while ago, that copy, but it said 124 months, 8-year rehearing, expected release date 1 year after. So it'd be like May
I'm sorry, how many
2025.
months were you previously told? 124 months?
124, yeah. And it said expected release date May of 2025.
Well, unless the board orders it, so the guideline, even if you are correct, sir, and I will have it looked into, just so you know, we have a whole department that deals with the guideline. That's just a suggestion, right? That doesn't, the board can go below that date, they can go above that date, the same date they ultimately decide. But obviously, I do want to make sure that that guideline is correct. So like I said, I will have our department look into that deals with
Okay.
that. And when you get your decision, it'll probably address that issue of the guideline
Yeah.
as well, okay? Do you have any closing comments or questions for myself or for the board, sir?
Right now, as far as employment I'm looking into, I have had, I wouldn't say any promises, but there's some promising leads that I've been, from some people up at Utah State University said they could forward me to some jobs that are like related to my degree in ecology, forestry. And with the upcoming water conservation thing, I've had a lot of experience doing that with like consulting and native plant xeriscaping. And I'm looking to work into that. And I've got a few leads on that as well from Utah Valley or Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District actually invited me to look into them, to contact when I got out. So like I said, it's promising, but no promises.
But it still sounds like you're looking into it, which is good. All right, sir. I've made notes of all of your comments today. We'll go ahead and conclude. Thank you so much for coming to this hearing.
And do you want these letters too?
I'll have the officer scan them and then you can keep them, but
Oh,
I'll,
okay.
I'll put it in the file.
Okay, thank you.
Right, spin around for just a second, say a quick word.
So Utah granted his parole. They granted his parole effective October 22, 2024. So at the time of this recording, that's in 4 months. Man, I mean, they certainly are doing a good job keeping their constituency safe. This is the second time that he was caught soliciting a child. And as you can see from his hearing, he just doesn't get it. I mean, it's even throughout his parole hearing, it's just making an excuse after first, lying about the age. Oh, it's 14, not 13, which is, like it even makes a difference. But we always see those type of, discrepancies. And we'll go over the report of how he was caught. And I think it's quite fascinating how dumb this guy is. The detectives that actually caught him recognize his email address because he used the same email in 2014 that he did in 1994, if you can believe that. So, Richard put together just so we could understand how it all worked because of how many sentences he had. But, so his release is contingent that he completes his sex offender treatment program, which, we only have to assume he will. It's interesting because he has like a full term date of like over 100-year sentence, but he would, so Richard has it all written down here. I'll share the screen with you. And thank you, Richard, for doing this because it is confusing. So release is contingent upon completing his SOT. The board consider the program completion positive progress and of compliance, good behavior. The code limits certain consecutive sentences to 30 years. So the board has determined that your sentences as currently imposed are subject to 30 years statutory limit. The sentence expiration date will remain consistent with the sentence in order by the court. So basically what, again, it's more smoke and mirrors by Utah, because when you look at his actual, full term date, he's not to get out for another basically 100 years. But that's just not the way it actually works in reality. It's again smoke and mirrors and just like a scam by the Utah system. The maximum he was actually allowed to serve is 30 years, not the 100+ years. And anyways, he's getting out on parole after, it seems, 10-year sentence, which, you might argue is still quite a long time for these type of sting operations. We see people in Utah get a fraction of these sentences for actually being successful in harming a child. But there's no way of getting around it that he is dangerous. This is his obsession. This is what he loves to do. And so this is about him getting caught for the 13-year-old girl. So the girl, however, was an undercover police officer. And so Ames, 57, here was arrested and booked in Utah County Jail for investigation of enticing of a minor. On April 9th, a Pleasant Grove police officer conducting an undercover investigation came across an online on Craigslist for a man looking for young girls, according to police affidavit. So remember, he puts it up on Craigslist and says, specifically, I want young girls. That's how smart this guy is. The officer responded to the ad by posing as a 13-year-old girl. The affidavit states that he allegedly began sending the girl emails on account that an officer said he recognized as an email used in another undercover operation he was involved with. See that? How he uses the same email from 1994? Or is it a different operation? I don't know. Paul began emailing asking for pictures of me. Paul continued to email me asking where I was and what I was doing, the affidavit states. On Thursday, Ames sent the girl an email saying he was in Spanish Fork and asked to know where she was. I told him I was in school, the officer replied. He asked what school and wanted to know what time school gets out. He also asked if I was wearing something that showed my legs. I asked what he wanted to do. He said he wanted to stare at my legs. He later said he hadn't kissed or touched anyone in a long time. As the emails continued, Ames said he wanted to perform sexual acts on the girl, according to the affidavit. The undercover officer agreed to meet Ames at Park Spanish Fork. In the meantime, the officer found Ames at a coffee shop and followed him. I conducted surveillance and watched him leave after he said he was on his way. I conducted a loose follow and observed him circle to the park looking for someone. He then pulled into a parking stall directly in front of the area they were to meet, the officer wrote. Ames was arrested in the park after he was taken into custody, the officer said. He told me how lonely he was and how he talks to anybody online. Utah court records show that he was convicted of a misdemeanor sex solicitation. That's why it's only a misdemeanor they gave him in 1991. Can you imagine? In 94, he was convicted of 2 counts of aggravated exploitation of a prostitute, and a sodomy on a child charge was dismissed. Wow. So he commits sodomy on a child and they dismissed it. It's insane. He was placed on probation, which he successfully completed in 96. He was given probation. And if one thinks that he didn't have other crimes in all that in the decade until then, I think you have to be in denial or just blind, or maybe as wantonly blind as the Utah Department of Corrections that is there to protect us, or I should say the DA, the judges. And they let him out again. And you listen to the hearings. I mean, he really describes it as, well, I wanted a relationship. Well, I thought that younger people could look up to me. I mean, there's no, and you hear the reports, there's no accountability. It's like it's the classic Roach mindset. But again, what's most terrifying is the system that should clearly understand this, should clearly know that he can't be fixed by programs, that he is a danger to society. The only saving grace for us is that he's just dumb. I mean, he's really, really dumb. But and hopefully they'll catch him again. But it's his obsession. And to think that he's not going to, in the rest of his lifetime, find another way to engage in his obsession, it's just lunacy. He's going to have nothing to do with all the time that he's going to have, except obsess about how he can accomplish his goal without getting caught this time. But hopefully he will get caught. Anyways, thank you, Richard, for the information. You probably wouldn't believe it if you didn't see it. And we'll move.
And,
What did you do?
Pardon?
What did you do to J.M.?
Well, that was, that's when he came in the room and he was having sex with Carol.
He was having sex with Carol?
Yeah, he was.
Do you feel like, based off of your observation, that it was forced?
You know, at that time, it's like, I know we weren't drinking or anything like that, and just Carol had these fantasies of, having multiple partners.
Multiple partners. What he's talking about there is the biological mother of a 6-year-old boy that he walked in on. Now, this case, I have to give you just the strongest disclaimer. It is probably the most severe case that we've seen in terms of description. Even the parole board interviewer makes that statement. So this is the trigger warning in advance. We have a lot of details to unpack at the end of this hearing, and we will do that. So with that, let's jump in.
Robert?
Yes, I'm ready. I was told that we're gonna have a victim. Do you know anything about that?
I was notified that also, but I haven't seen him try to get on.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start. Then if they show up, we'll let them in and they can say what they'd like.
All right. On record.
All right, this is time, place set for an original hearing for Mr. Stephen Allen Archuleta, offender number 75956. Is that you, sir?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Archuleta. My name is Robert Samuels, and I'm a hearing officer at the Board of Pardons. You're going to be providing me a testimony today, so I'll need to place you under oath. Do you swear and affirm the testimony you're about to provide will be truthful and accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Archuleta, did you get at least 7 days prior notice of this hearing? Did you get a blue packet and have time to go over that?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right. Was there anything wrong with that information, or am I good to move forward with this hearing?
The only thing I had a question on was, when they said on my blue packet was that I fled Utah. I didn't flee Utah after I got divorced. I stayed in Utah until it was October of 2000. I took care of my father until he passed away in 99.
Mhm. So you went to Florida then, and it seems like that there was quite a substantial amount of time before charges were filed against you. So it makes sense that you would have left the state, in that time frame.
Right.
Okay. All right. I'll note that, and we can move forward. All right. I've got to go over the facts of the case, which is 211-100-577, 2 counts of attempted aggravated sexual abuse of a child, both first-degree felonies. Both have an offense expiration date of 6/16 of 21/21. I've got to tell you that when I was preparing your case, reading the facts of the probable cause statement, I found it to be very disturbing. One of the more disturbing cases that has come across my desk in a very long time, sir. On April 23rd of 2020, the Logan Police Department received a case referral from the San Pete County Sheriff's Office regarding a delayed report involving sexual abuse of a child in the 1990s. The incident occurred in Logan, Utah between the years of 1991 to 1997. For purposes of this report and to protect the privacy, the victims in this case will be referred to by their initials SA and JA. It is important to note that the co-defendant in this case, Carol A. Ricker, who is currently serving a prison sentence at Utah State Prison for sexual abuse of SA's brother, JA, and his other brother, JCA. There was an investigation completed in 2009. It is unclear why Stephen Archuleta was not prosecuted at that time, but it is believed he has fled the state of Utah, and we're changing that. The video interview with SA was completed on May 26th of 2020 at the Logan Police Department. During the interview, SA reported that he began being physically and sexually abused when he was around the age of 9 or 10. This had been down between the years of 1991 and 1992. SA reported his mother, Miss Ricker, began groping him all over and under his clothing. SA stated during this time frame, Miss Ricker married Mr. Archuleta, who became his stepfather, and this was when the abuse became worse. SA stated he knew it was 1992 because he was in Miss Richardson's 4th grade class in 91 to 92. SA stated Miss Ricker and Mr. Archuleta would have sex in front of him and make him interact with them while they engaged in sexual acts. SA stated both Miss Ricker and Mr. Archuleta would fondle him and Miss Ricker would perform oral sex on him. SA reported that Mr. Archuleta would also enter his bedroom while Miss Ricker would be at work. SA stated Mr. Archuleta would anally sodomize him and threaten him with violence if he told anybody. SA stated this happened several times. SA reported he was deathly scared of him. JA reported more events where Miss Ricker and Mr. Archuleta would make him and his brothers watch them engage in sexual intercourse. JA reported a time when Miss Ricker and Mr. Archuleta would then touch his testicles with salad tongs and forced his older brother, JCA, to put a rolling pin into Carol's vagina. JA reported an event where Mr. Archuleta was attempted to anally penetrate SA with his penis. JA stated he did not know if the penetration occurred or not, but he remembered SA crying. In another episode, JA reported a time when his mother held him down while Mr. Archuleta attempted to sodomize him. He stated Mr. Archuleta got off him when he freaked out. Mr. Archuleta then instructed SA to come over and fuck him good. He reported this occurred when he was in 6th grade. He stated he and his brothers would be physically punished for refusing to engage with Mr. Archuleta and his mother. SA stated during the year 1996, he would have been 13 to 14 years of age. SA stated he was burned badly in a gasoline incident. SA reported during the time, Mr. Archuleta would anally sodomize him with household objects, including a curling iron, brush handles, candles, and sex toys. SA stated Mr. Archuleta would manually stimulate his own penis while doing this, and also have CS stimulate his penis at the same time. SA reported in early 1997, Miss Ricker came home and caught Mr. Archuleta sodomizing him. SA reported that Miss Ricker and Mr. Archuleta began sodomizing him together as soon as Mr. Ricker encouraged him to stimulate her vagina while Mr. Archuleta sodomized him. On July 17th of 2020, an audio recorded interview was completed with Miss Ricker at the Utah State Prison in Draper. During the interview, Miss Ricker admitted to having sexual intercourse with SA on multiple occasions, but denied oral sex with SA. Miss Ricker denied helping Mr. Archuleta anally sodomize SA. Miss Ricker did admit to having sex with Mr. Archuleta in front of SA, JA, and their older brother, JCA. Miss Ricker stated she could not remember if the boys were asked to interact with the sex. Miss Ricker did admit that around the years of 1993 to 94, JA came into her and Mr. Archuleta's bedroom while they were having sex. Miss Ricker stated JA would have been 9 or 10 years old at the time. Miss Ricker stated Mr. Archuleta removed JA's clothing and showed him how to stimulate his penis on his own. Miss Ricker stated Mr. Archuleta then helped JA to stimulate his penis. On May 15 of 2021, Cache County Attorney Office Investigator Nate Argyle completed an audio recorded interview with JA. During the interview, JA reported sexual and physical abuse by both Miss Ricker and Mr. Archuleta. JA stated he believed Mr. Archuleta moved into his home when he was around the age of 4 or 5. JA stated he believed the sexual abuse began when he was in 1st grade, around 6 or 7 years old, when he and his brothers were forced to manually stimulate Mr. Archuleta's penis. JA stated his mother, Miss Ricker, was also involved in JA. Stated he remembered They're clearly happening at the Blue House in Logan. JA reported that when he was in sixth grade, approximately 11 to 12 years of age, they were now living at a different place in Logan. JA reported he and SA were told to come into Mr. Ricker and Miss Archuletta's bedroom. There, JA reported that Mr. Archuleta penetrated both he and JA anally with his penis. JA reported his mother held him down because he was screaming and crying. JA reported Mr. Archuleta is not circumcised and his mother would make him watch Mr. Archuleta ejaculate frequently over a 7-year period of time. Is that all factually correct, sir?
No, sir.
What's wrong?
Well, first of all, and I met Carol in 90, and we lived in a small house that had no doors on the bedroom doors, and the boys' bedroom was right behind ours, so they had to go through our room, to go do what they were going to do. And in 91, my mother passed away, and I was depressed, and I was taking Prozac at the time. And the only thing that is correct on that was when JA came into the room with me and Carol, and that was the only time. And the other in 2000 and no, it's in 2009. I got a call from Carol saying that she was going to court for having sex with the boys, and she wanted me to testify for her. And I was living in Kansas at the time. And I talked to Carol's attorney, and he said, I quote, "We need to get you over here, to testify for Carol," because I was there. And then her attorney called back and called me back and said I didn't need to come to Utah because she took a plea deal. Now, SA and his father, I talked with them on the phone, and SA told me, I quote, "Oh, this is a bunch of bull crap. What's going on with his mother?" That's what he stated to me. And I talked to his father, which I got along with just fine, the whole family. And he said he talked with JA, and JA told him, I opened up a can of worms I cannot close. That's what his father told me, that he told JA told his father at that time. And I was going to come to Utah and help Carol because she told me other things that were going on that I know didn't happen, and testify for her. And then her attorney, I don't know who attorney was, but he said I did not have to come and testify, for Carol because she took the plea deal. Now in 2020, I was living in Florida, and I got arrested in Florida. I got extradited to Utah, and when I got into Cache County, there was an investigator came and saw me, and he told me, "You know why you're here?" And I thought it was for JA, but he said it was SA, and SA is one that told me that, "Oh, this is just bogus." And he was living in Vernal at the time because he did not get along with his brothers. And when I was incarcerated in Cache County, I was living. I was in a cell with JA and SA's cousin, and he told me, he said that the kid's grandmother and uncle have nothing to do with him because they're constantly lying. And I said, well, I don't know anything about that. You know, it has nothing to do with me, you know. And the thing of it is that if I was to did anything to SA, you know, why didn't they come get me? Come and get me from Kansas. You know, I wasn't hiding. You know, I was able to uh, help out. You know, her attorney. You know, and as far as JA goes, he was the only one that was that we did anything with. You know, and this was Carol's idea, and I was totally against it, and I feel bad for allowing that to happen. Carol and I, we never had a good relationship. She was very what you call mean as far as you know, always hitting me and stuff like that. So I was in a toxic relationship, had no way out, you know, and I don't want to fail the marriage, you know, and I felt bad with JA, you know, because I should have said something. Because at that time I was taking counseling, you know, for my depression. You know, I lost my mom in '91. I lost my brother in '94. And I lost my nephew in '95. So the '90s were not very good for me. And I lost my dad in '99. You know, and after me and Carol split up, I would go back and visit the kids, see how they're doing. You know, I would pop in and visit. I asked Carol if I could come visit, you know, and I did, you know, and to see how the kids were doing. And Jeremiah, he moved out and he was living with some girl. I don't even think he even completed high school, you know. And Carol took me over to his house to see how he was doing and introduced me to his living girlfriend, you know. So I had in my family, my friend Tom. He was married to my niece, but he ran into Carol and the boys probably. I think it was in I want to say 2002, something like that, you know, and ran into them in Salt Lake. And he said everything seemed to be fine, you know, because he talked to them and we would go boating with them and everything, take the boys boating and all that. And, you know, and I would get involved with the boys' baseball and I would get involved with their Boy Scouts, you know, and I would just be involved with them, you know, and their dad, and they were not receiving child support or anything like that, but I paid for their medical through my work, you know, because I thought that was the right thing to do, you know. So for a while there, even when Scott got injured, you know, after I left, I was still making the payments on the medical bill, you know, and but it was just all a shock to me when I got arrested in Florida because I had nothing to hide. I didn't fight the extradition or anything like that. You know, I said, okay, well, let's go. You know, I mean, I want to see what's going on. You know, when I found out it was SA that was doing that too, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I know JA was the one, but not SA. You know, but like I say, it was like 30 some odd years ago. You know, I mean, and if I did anything, you know, I feel bad. I mean, I feel bad for those kids, you know, and I felt bad for what I'd done, you know, and
What did you do?
pardon?
What did you do to JM?
Well, that was that's when he came in the room and he was having sex with Carol.
He was having sex with Carol?
Yeah, he was.
Do you feel like, based off of your observation, that it was forced?
Uh, you know, at that time, you know, it's like I know we weren't drinking or anything like that, you know, and just Carol had these fantasies of, you know, having multiple partners.
Okay, so that didn't really answer my question.
Pardon?
That didn't answer my question.
Now, what was the question again?
Based off of your observation, do you feel like JA was being forced into having sex with Carol?
No.
Okay. Okay. So did you take a plea or were you found guilty by a jury?
Pardon?
Did you take a plea or were you found guilty?
I took a plea deal.
Why did you do that?
I took a plea deal because I knew that it was wrong with what I did with JA. You know, and
You didn't do really anything wrong other than not reporting it to the authorities.
right, and I should have I should have reported to the authorities.
That
You
doesn't
know,
make
and
any sense.
pardon?
That doesn't make any sense. You're gonna take 2 first-degree life top sentences for that? That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, you know, I was kind of like, if I take it to trial, you know, then chances are I won't get out. You know, and I did when I was in Cache County, I had to go through 4 lawyers because the other lawyers that were going to represent me were representing my victims and everything in prior cases. You know, so that was like a conflict of interest. So finally, Mr. McGinnis was my attorney. You know, so it was a long period of time, and I just wanted to get it over with. You know, I mean, I don't want it to prolong. I was there in Cache County for 2 years. You know, just constantly, you know, extend the court date and everything, and you know, and I mean, when I talked to Scott in 2009, you know, he told me that, like I said, that, oh, this is bogus, you know, what was going on. And I just didn't, I was just kind of floored with that, you know.
So there's been no restitution filed. There's been no victim reports submitted that I've been able to find. The victim was supposed to show up today and testify, but so far they have not. You score low on your LSR&R. You score low on every category except for pro-criminal attitude orientation, which you scored a medium on. You don't appear to have a drug issue. You did drink, but I'm guessing here that you say it stopped at 28, which is before these alleged incidents occurred. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell me about your mental health.
2017, I was involved in a automobile accident and left a contusion on my brain. And I've been getting therapy from the VA, mental health therapy for the VA before my incarceration. And now, you know, while I'm in here, I've been going to mental health sessions with Mr. Larson here at this facility.
Did you retire from the military?
Yes, sir, honorable discharge.
You've been successful in taking classes since you've been at the prison, which is good.
Yes, and I've enjoyed the classes also, and I mean, despite my mistakes that I made and bad choices that I made in the past, you know, these classes really helped me out, you know, and whenever I do get released, I want to continue to help out others, you know.
What's the biggest thing you need to change in your life?
Making better choices in my life, and better decisions, and make better choices, better decisions, and be around more positive people.
Can you tell me a little bit more about better choices and decisions, what that means?
Well, you know, I've been married before about 4 times, and my choices haven't been that great, you know, and I've always believed what people tell me, you know, and then turn out they're not what they are, you know, later on. And I just need to make better choices in that aspect, and as far as my decision making, you know, think and make better decisions.
Okay. What are your release plans?
Pardon?
What are your release plans?
My release plan is to establish myself in the community, uh, continue to volunteer, and I love volunteering with the Wounded Warrior Project. That's what I was doing before I got incarcerated, and I was working with the homeless, feeding them and help feeding the homeless. And my profession was restoration, and I would help people restore their homes after natural disasters and getting them on their feet. And
Where are
I
you
was
gonna, where are you gonna live? Who are you gonna live with? What are your plans for aftercare?
I want to be independent and live by myself. I need to be more independent with myself.
How are you gonna make a living?
Well, I was on disability. I'd have to get that reinstated and then get a part-time job.
Have you figured out where you're gonna go for therapy?
Well, the VA has a pretty good therapy program, and
Okay. All right. You've answered all my questions. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
I like to take the SOTP program. The MRT program. I think I'm starting that in July. I believe my case managers get me set up with that.
Mhm.
and assertiveness program.
All right, you have a guideline of April 16th of 2025 after service of 46 months. I guess the decision will be is if the board will parole you or not. And if they decide if they're going to stay at guideline, go below it or stay above it, they will take my recommendation under advisement, but they're not bound by my recommendation. The board's a 5-person panel, so it's a majority rule. When 3 members are in agreement, that will be their decision. And you'll get that decision in writing probably in the next 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck.
He was denied parole, but he's given a rehearing in just 2 years, April of 2026. Why he would ever get a rehearing is insane. If you recall from the beginning, they said, hey, we're supposed to have a victim come on to make a statement. And, the victim never came on. There could be any number of reasons. But it could also just be that the victim just couldn't do it. And that is something, again, that to put this victim through it again, to have to maybe come up, to have to go to the struggle, to maybe make a statement in just 2 more years, it's just madness. Of course, there's no DA that shows up. Of course, there's no, but just think about that the idea that the victim could have been prepared, certainly said they were going to show up, but then just couldn't do it. And now is going to have to put through that all over again. Now let's go through the details of this case. But of course, even before we do, it's just the clarity of seeing what a monster, what a disgusting monster roach this is. The idea that he could actually continue to have opportunities for parole is insane. The idea that this is built, that this is baked into the legislation of Utah is insane. And we're going to go over his co-defendant, the biological sorry excuse of a roach mother, and how lenient they were on her. First, I want to again thank Richard for getting this case. These cases are much more difficult to record. I was traveling and Richard figured it out, recorded it, and then of course did the research. And it's so important because if we don't record these, they're just lost in time. They're lost in the archives. And, these of course are demonetized, right? We're showing this because it needs to be seen. We're showing this because people need to understand, in my opinion, how broken the system is. Of course, we know that monsters exist. We know that roaches exist. But how many of us are surprised that these monsters and roaches get the little sentences that they get, or that they have the opportunity for parole just year after year after year, or how often they're released, or just how they think, how their mindsets work, how ridiculous the low risk score algorithms are. For those who still have their head in the sand and think that these things can be changed or somehow fixed, this is why we do this. On that note, let's jump to this report provided in 2010 by the the district attorney's office. And I just want to show their two-faced They're two-faced. What's the word I'm looking for? Just complete fakeness. So they have this report where they bring up one of the worst crimes. And of course, it's this crime that we're talking about now. And they're trying to state in this report how well they've done to protect their children, what they're doing, some of the problems with the laws, but we'll call out just the hypocrisy. Maybe that's the word I was looking for in this because of how ridiculous it is. So, crimes against women and children. This division is uniquely qualified to deal with cases that are sensitive to victims and families. In addition, remember, this is a 24-page report. This is one page where they call it this particular case and how good of a job they're doing, okay? In addition to a full-time prosecutor, also assigned to these cases are legal assistant, victim advocate, and special investigator, all of whom you saw show up for the parole hearing, right? Oh, wait, no, none of them showed up. My bad. One of the more heinous cases involved Carol Ricker. Miss Ricker sexually assaulted 2 victims, her children, for nearly a decade during the 80s and 90s. The victims showed great courage in reporting the abuse to law enforcement and cooperating with the prosecutor. Through settlement negotiations, this is what they call their settlement negotiations, Ms. Ricker pled guilty to 2 counts of attempted. They let her plead to 2 counts of attempted. So in the same one pager where they talk about how vile this crime is, and then the courage of the victims, they then in a paragraph later allow her to plead guilty to 2 counts of attempted. Okay? And although attempted sexual assault of a child is now punishable by up to 15 years in prison, Ms. Ricker could only be sentenced according to the laws that were effective at the time she committed her crimes. So the judge sentenced her to the full extent of 2 terms of 3 years to life in prison to run consecutive back-to-back. So just 6 years. Don't get confused by the to life. That's how Utah works. They don't serve the life. They get paroled after 3 years. So let me point out again to the insanity of this. They are stating there's a problem because of the old laws that they're only able to give her this sentence. But remember, they are the ones that took the plea deal. They are the ones that offered the plea deal. They are the ones that allowed her to plead to 2 counts of attempted sexual assault. They should have prosecuted her to the fullest extent of every single count and locked her up for life. Here they are saying there's a problem with the legislation. They were only allowed to give her these years, but they're the ones that made the deal. If you need any more proof how complicit the district attorney's office is in these insane prosecutions, is their own one-pager that they put together trying to prove a point without realizing at all that maybe someone will look at this with critical eyes and just call them out how two-faced they are. Now, the judge indicated he would write a letter to the board of pardons, recommend that she never be released from prison. He indicated he would write a letter. Miss Ricker is a good case, a good example that there is no specific type of person who commits child sexual abuse is committed by men, women of all walks of life. Right. Well, I suppose it wouldn't surprise you to learn that she is already out on parole. I don't know. Maybe that judge never wrote the letter, or maybe no one cares. But yes, she is out on parole. You can't make it up. Wouldn't believe it if you didn't see it. That's why we do this. Never gets old. It's a broken record, huh? And you know what's interesting is that more victims did come out, and she did plead guilty to these new charges, but it didn't affect her sentence at all. So She was originally convicted of 2 counts of attempted rape in 2010, currently serving 2 consecutive 3 years to life, which we know is a joke. She's already on parole, remember? She was arrested in May after a warrant was issued by a judge. We're talking about her co-defendant. During Wednesday's hearing, defense attorney explained that as part of the plea deal, prosecutors agreed to drop the remaining charges against her. She also agreed to cooperate against him. So she was, helped lock him up. Now, she had served 13 years in prison by that time, when she then went to do the but hold on one second. Here it is. So this is it here. While making an interview, she was convicted for abusing boys in 2009 and was sentenced to prison. And then she was convicted with similar new offenses in 2022. But she still got out on parole. She's on parole even while getting convicted. So they said, okay, you know what? Like, someone else came forward. She took and then they would have paroled her just a year or less later. She's out. She's a serial predator, a serial queen roach, and she's out. This is in the article written just April 2023, if you can imagine. A 63-year-old former Logan man has been sentenced to prison for abusing several boys physically and sexually more than 25 years ago. Stephen Al Archuleta was ordered to serve 3 years to life, also just 3 years to life. Archuleta was sentenced Wednesday morning. He previously accepted a plea deal, pleading guilty to 2 counts of aggravated sexual abuse of a child, first-degree felony. In 2020, Logan police officers received a delayed report involving abuse of a child. The incident occurred between 91 and 97. A detective interviewed the victim on May 6, 2020. Can you imagine to be someone to be brave and report it in 2020 and just 4 years later have to be called up to attend a parole hearing? A detective interviewed the victim on May 26, 2020. The man disclosed how he began being physically abused when he was around the age of 9 or 10. Archuleta would sexually assault him and threaten him with violence if he told anybody. The abuse continued until he was approximately 13 or 14 years old. Remember, at this parole hearing, what did he admitted to? He admitted to walking in on them, and he was the victim. She had a drinking problem. She would hit him. Poor me. On March 15, 2021, the detective interviewed the second victim. The man also reported similar abuse occurring when he was between 6 and 7 years old. Both victims described how the roach and the roach's wife, their mother, or whatever, Carol, 60-year-old woman, would engage in sexual acts while making them interact with them. She was convicted of abusing the boys in 2009 and was sentenced to prison. She was convicted with similar new offense in 2022. Now she is currently on parole. During Wednesday's sentencing, one of the victims explained how the earliest memories he had was being lost as a child. That's his earliest memories. Think about that. He called Archuleta a cruel, ignorant monster. The man also described how the past several decades had been rough as law enforcement and prosecutors refused to investigate or charge the defendant. And that makes sense, because if she was arrested in that early on, right? Why did it take so long? Well, here it goes. They refused to. They refused to even investigate. There were people who knew about this for years and never did anything until now, the man told the court. I had the prosecutor's office responsible for not listening to the voices of children. I hold I hold the prosecutor's office responsible for not listening to the voices of children. It's right here. Everything broken about the system is right here in this case. Archuleta said that he prayed for his victims that one day they might forgive him. Shut up. He told the court if he ever gets out of prison, he wants to help others. Oh, shut up. Judge Brian Cannell of Archuleta's actions were intolerable. He should never have happened. He told the victim, our system failed in this situation, and it's still failing. You're all just since the crimes occurred in 96, before harsher penalties were mandated by the legislature, Archuleta was sentenced one term of 3 years to life in prison. Again, we called that already, how this is a lie. Judge Cannell will officially sign the sentencing order, not a lie, but manipulation. In May, after a pre-sentence report is corrected, Archuleta should be serving upwards to lifeline bars, but it'll be up to the Utah Board of Pardons and Paroles to determine if he's released. And we should have no faith in the Utah Board of Pardons and Paroles. And, again, this is why we do this. Thank you, Richard. It's clear as day to anyone with common sense that the system is broken, even when the DA's office tries to claim that it was previously broken. This is why things happen. The whole thing is a clear lie to anyone who can understand the system, and they thrive on the system being complicated. They love that. They love using that as a tool against the victims they're supposed to protect. But this is why we do this. And with that, I'll let you go.